Well, good morning. I'm here to introduce you to your next session. It's called Mountains of Support, Building Advising Infrastructure Through Leadership and Community. And presenting it will be Sarah Davis, Tammy Reynolds, Lacie, Bittinger, Dean Crawford, and they are all from Marshall University. At any point, you are welcome to put any comments or questions into the chat, and we can address those as they go through the presentation. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go for it.
Whenever we sent out the call for what kind of information do you guys want at this conference, some of the feedback that we got was about wanting administration types of presentations about administration. So I'm Sarah Davis. I'm the Senior Director of Advising here at Marshall, and my fellow presenters today are also administrators here. As we go through the presentation, they'll introduce themselves and what department they oversee. But we built this together to be a general overview of a wide range of administrator tasks, duties, responsibilities. And we built some time at the end. If you want to get into the weeds about something, we can have some question and answers at the end, but we're going to go through everything in generally a broad way. So today's presentation includes, let's see. The first section is going to be about our advising council and how you can build an advising council on your campus, the purpose of having an advising council, how you build it, and how you practice it. The second section of our presentation will be about streamlining communication, building advisor caseloads, and answering like complaints and things like that. And the third and final section of our presentation will be about using emotional intelligence and other type things to connect with your team and build a community within your team to enhance your practices in your program. Okay, so the first section is about an advising council. What is an advising council? Our advising council is what I'm going to talk a lot about, but yours, if you make one or already have one, could look similar to this. So at our school, our advising council is made up from leaders of all of our colleges. We are a decentralized school. So I'm the director of advising, but we also have leadership in all of our different colleges, and all of our colleges run their own advising within the college. So we needed a force to come together where we could talk to each other and work together to solve problems, to make our processes the same. So we could make sure that our students were experiencing the same thing no matter where they went. As we all know, students tend to change their major, they go across college, and they say, oh, I've been doing it this way over here, and it's totally different here. So that was what we wanted to do. So the purpose of having an advising council is very wide. It unifies your advising efforts so everybody can be working towards the same thing. The way that it helps build community is it creates a space for advisors' voices to be heard and valued. We don't have a tiered structure to our advising council. We just are all together. Everybody's voice matters. You can put things on the agenda. You can bring things up at the meeting that you didn't put on the agenda. You can complain, you can celebrate, we can work on whatever task we need to. Sometimes we work through tasks over several different meetings if it is a challenging task and we need to work for them, but everybody's voice is heard and valued. We want to promote consistency in advising practices and student experience, and we want to encourage collaboration. Like we've been talking about in the NACADA involvement and hearing from other people, my idea isn't always the best idea. In fact, sometimes it's a bad idea. So I have, my advising council to help me work through things. They have us to help them work through things. It might be a problem that we're solving campus-wide, or it might just be something within a college or within a program that we're working to support each other. We also support advisor development through community and leadership with our council. and we set goals together to aim for within, the next year or long-term, short-term, that align with our mission and our student success initiatives. So let's look at what the makeup of an advising council looks like. So if that purpose sounds like something you're interested in and you are a director, or maybe you're not a director and you're like, oh, my school really needs that, this is how you can put it together. So the leadership can be the director of advising, or if you don't have a director of advising, it can be anyone. It just has to be someone who wants to unite everyone together. Like I was saying with the Emerging Leaders Program, it doesn't have to be a leader by label. Anybody who wants to set this up can be the person who sets it up. It's essentially just a committee. We called it a council, so it's fancy. So you can have a chair, and you can have two chairs if two of you want to run it together. You could elect it if you think that there might be some several people that want it and you want to do an election, so it's fair. You could have a rotation. Maybe there's not a centralized leadership and there's 4 groups on your campus and you just rotate who is the leader. Any of those would work. You figure out what works best for your school. The second part is who's going to be on it. So for us, it's every college is represented. We also have RBA program represented. We also have Honors College represented. We also have our Buck Harlow Student Athlete Program represented. You don't have to stop there. If you want your advising council to be bigger and you want to include someone from the registrar's office, you can. You could just have them come as a guest as needed for something that's coming up on your agenda. They don't have to attend every meeting. So I would say start with like the heart of your advising program, leaders within your programs and colleges, and then grow. All the people that I just listed weren't on my original advising council. We've had advising council for 5 years. So that's the evolution of our council, and you could start small and expand. Mission and goals should definitely be part of how you work together. In fact, I would launch with that, starting with shared goals, and I'll show you all here in a minute what some of the first things we did together is setting a mission and goals together. You want to make sure you have open communication, that these people are the ones who will trickle down the communication to everybody else. You want to be flexible. And you have to be patient. This is a trust building process. You're going to start working together and you want to be collaborative. Okay, I think I've got 2 minutes left for my time. Okay, the other thing you want to talk about for structure is when are you going to meet? Because that can be a little bit tricky. So you want to work that out with everybody. So how do you do this? So whoever is running the council can set the agenda every month. Or whatever your frequency of meeting is, but you can also collect agenda items. So whoever's on your panel, you could send that out and say, hey, what do you guys want on the agenda? After the meeting, you want to send out shared notes in case somebody missed it. You want to encourage open dialogue and feedback during your meeting. You want to try to address any challenges that are coming up or check the calendar. What are these events? What has worked well for us before? What do we want to change this time? And you want to celebrate wins and share your best practices with each others. So in our experience, these are the pros and cons of having an advising council. So the pros, improve student experience. Students are getting similar experiences no matter where they go. It's a great forum for collaboration, diverse brainstorming, and shared goals. The cons is it can be hard to schedule depending on what everybody's availability is, especially if you're talking about a lot of faculty advisors. The resistance to change, that's really on the front load right at the beginning, because some people may feel like, oh, if I'm part of this, I'm losing the autonomy of running my own program. And the final con is not everyone leaves satisfied. So if you have a council of 10 people and 8 of you want something and 2 of you don't want it, then those people may leave frustrated. So you have to be willing to accept the cons to make this work, but ultimately, it is a great thing to do. And there's a citation on the first slide about it being a best practice and how other universities are doing it. And it is backed by NACADA, and it does really help you relate to each other. And the other part about it that's not in these slides is you just get to sit and laugh. I mean, you're sitting there, you become more friends, you get to know each other more. Not the whole hour meeting isn't just talking about work things. You get sidetracked, and you should go down those sidetracks because that's how you build deeper connections and work together. The next slide, I'm just going to leave in here. You guys know you'll have access to the slides after the presentation. You can come back and look at these anytime. But these are some of the first things we did together as a council. We made a vision, we wrote a mission, and we said, what are our learning outcomes for students? And you can imagine this was 8 people, and they didn't really know me in this role, and all 8 of us wrote this together on a shared document. So it was a challenge, but a positive challenge, and we haven't edited these. These have stayed the same for years. So this is a great starter practice. If you do decide to have a council, this is where you should start. It's very collaborative, it's very think tank, and it helps you build working goals together. So now that is the first part of the presentation that is very top down for administration of your whole advising unit on your campus. The rest of the presentation is going to be from our individual units, and I'm going to pass it off to Tammy now.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, I'm Tammy Reynolds. I'm the Academic Program Manager for the College of Liberal Arts here at Marshall. And as Sarah was saying, when she first came, we never had that position before. We didn't have a director of undergraduate advising before she came, and we were very, very much siloed. And I don't think we realized how siloed we were until we started collaborating together. And it's one of those things like, I'm going to pick on Lacie for a minute. Like, she may have had a best practice or something, and I didn't practice that way, but her way was more efficient. And we learned that through advising councils and our team building activities. Also, we realized that a lot of the communication wasn't streamlined. So some advisors may know that this policy XYZ was changing, but maybe the other advisors didn't know. The ACT score for math was changing for the 100th time. So it's just streamlining that communication. And all of that now goes through Sarah, and then it comes to us. And so what we do with it in our units is streamlining that communication. So we want to build relationships. Each office is set up a little bit different. So as Sarah said, we're decentralized, but centralized within our unit. And some have, I'm going to pick on Lacie again, I'm sorry. Some have all professional advisors, like Lacie has all professional advisors in her office. In my office, we have 2 professional advisors and faculty advisors. And then it even goes a little deeper in my office. We have some that have faculty advisors for the first 2 years, and then they come to the professional advisors with a faculty mentor. So building those relationships in my particular office with the faculty, knowing that they can trust the professional advisors. How we do that is a shared goal on supporting the students and transparency and communication. We keep that communication open, not only among myself and my advising staff, but also with my faculty. Some faculty will call me on the phone and say, hey, can we make this exception in degree works? While others I know they want their communication through email. We do have a Teams created for the College of Liberal Arts advising staff that's professional and faculty. I'll be honest with you, that's not used very much. I think as the further we move from COVID, thank goodness, the more that it's either email or phone calls. And then one thing that we do in our office is we set an expectation on when we're going to respond to those emails. So faculty know that usually it's 24 hours for us, that they're going to get some type of answer. Also, we have that expectation down to our students. We send out a communication at the beginning of every semester that these are our working hours. This is when we're going to answer email. So we just keep that a common practice. We do utilize a shared note system. We do utilize Navigate and DegreeWorks. The faculty will actually put notes in both, so that's nice to see on our end. Keeping our touch points. And this is something that we do in my office is we do an advising newsletter that we send out to all of the faculty. So that will have and I have an example on the next slide that will have like updates or reminders and things like that. And don't be afraid to ask questions because we don't know what we don't know, but we can learn from each other. I ask my faculty questions all the time because, you know, I tell students all the time, I can help you progress towards degree, but I don't know the course content. I've never been an anthropologist. So you need to go talk to that expert in the field. And sometimes, you know, courses change and that information, the faculty may not get that information to us. So I'm all the time asking questions. And I think that helps builds that relationship between the professional advising staff and the faculty advising staff. Sarah, you want to move to the next slide, please? So this is an example of the newsletter that we send out. I'm going to be honest, some people actually loved it and said, thanks for these reminders. And some we absolutely know didn't read it because they'll email in us and said, when does advising start again? So, you know, if you decide to do this, if you decide to do this practice, just go into it with, it's not going to be the end all of questions. Some people are going to use it and others are just not going to open it up. So when we went into it, that expectation, we were like, okay, at least we know we put the information out there. So we included things like important dates, important links, commonly asked questions. If we saw that in our office, particularly faculty advisors were asking the same question over and over, then we'd put that in the newsletter. Announcements, reminders, and we do shout out some kudos too. And we try to send that out a couple of times a semester. I'll be honest, we have not done one yet this semester, but we'll work on it. The next slide. Okay, so one of the most important and most complicated aspects of communications is onboarding. And we realized that once Sarah came and we realized that we needed to hire some more advisors. So we've hired, I don't even know how many new advisors, a lot, but we didn't have an onboarding plan, nothing written down, nothing. I mean, we absolutely had zero. So we have started about 2 years ago to create our onboarding plan. So these are just objectives for onboarding. If you don't have an onboarding plan and you are hiring more advisors, or as Joy said, it's a trend of advisor turnover. It's to build consistency, confidence and competence, foster engagement and belonging. And you all can read the rest of these slides, but it's good to have some objectives before you actually start your plan. Go ahead, Sarah, that's fine. So I'm going to tell you what worked for us and what didn't work for us and where we started. So as I said, we didn't have anything. We knew that people needed access to IT. They needed to go to training, but nothing was written down. So I took the Appreciative Administration online course. And in that course, you are asked to create some type of plan that you will utilize in your institution or your unit or your college. So I took the opportunity, and Sarah, this was pre-planned. Sarah and I knew that this is what we were going to do. I created an onboarding plan. And what was really nice about that is we got the feedback from outside parties on what needed to be tweaked, what needed to be removed. So that feedback was really beneficial to us when creating our document. Then we took the document to our training and development committee, and they reviewed the plan, and then made further edits and adjustments, and then we presented it to Sarah. And then all of the lead advisors were to implement in their unit, right? Done with the plan, right? No. Let me tell you, it was a learning curve, at least on my part, and I think probably on all our parts, that onboarding is not a one size fits all. What somebody else like Lacie has an accreditation that is in the School of Business. So there may be a training session on accreditation that their advisors have to go through, where in the College of Liberal Arts, we don't have that specific accreditation. So that would not be a training that my advisors would have to go through. And we expected immediate implementation, right? We gave you the document, now you're going to go and it's all going to be good. Wrong, that didn't happen either. It was information overload because we were handing out a 10 to 15 page booklet that was just black and white and said, here, you go do all these things and now it's your onboarding plan. So moving forward, what we're doing is creating an onboarding plan in Microsoft Planner. So what that does is create, you can see it's not a good screenshot, but if you're familiar with Microsoft Planner, it has these little buckets. And so we can assign different tasks to the buckets. And we can assign tasks to Sarah as the Director of Undergraduate Advising, and then we can assign tasks to the new employee. And we can do first day, first week, second week, and month. Now, this is in the very infancy stages for us, but it's a fluid document. And so if Lacie needs to update it to add training specific to her college, she can do that, but she can assign it as needed. So we're looking forward to implementing this, hopefully next fall. We were hoping this fall, but that didn't happen. So now we're hoping next fall. I think, is that all mine? Do I have, yeah, that's, so I'm gonna turn it to Dean Crawford, who's gonna handle his part of the presentation.
Hey everybody, like Tammy said, my name is Dean Crawford. I am the Academic Program Manager for the College of Health Professions at Marshall. And today, my part of the presentation is I'm going to talk a little bit about creating an advising handbook and also assigning advisors to different students or assigning students to those advisors. Like Tammy and Sarah and everybody's been saying on this presentation, we are together in our advising council at Marshall, but we also have our own separate units of colleges that we all work with, and each college is very unique. So what works with my college may not work with Tammy's college or may not work with Lacie's. College Health Professions at Marshall is one of the larger colleges at Marshall. So we have more unique challenges because we just have a more diverse population to deal with and a more diverse major set to deal with. So an advising handbook is useful if you have a lot of things that you want to make sure are established among your staff and you want to avoid any ambiguity. A lot of people or a lot of places I've been tend to rely on the email method of, oh, well, it's in your email. I sent this email. Creating an advising handbook and, actually putting all these recommendations or policies or procedures in one place is a good place to start if you're a new administrator, or even if you're a current administrator and you just want to make sure that everything is together and you want to avoid any ambiguity. Depending on the technology usefulness that you have, you can make this a digital document. You can do an old school printout and binder version. And the great thing about this, it's a living document. You can alter it as you need, add stuff, take stuff out. Seems like there's always something new coming down with advising of, what we need to tell students and when they need to do certain things. So this can help you kind of keep all that in one place and make sure that your advisors all have access to the same information. So now I'm going to talk about getting your students set up with advisors, how to assign students to advisors. So again, this is something, if you're new to advising administration or you're new to your role, this is something you can look at, or maybe you've been in your role for a while and you want to consider maybe changing things up to better align with your advisor strengths or your student population. So with Marshall, we have two basic methods we use to assign advisors. One is alphabetically, where we literally just say, okay, advisor A takes students A through F, and advisor B takes the rest. Or with my college and other colleges of my size, we do it by major or by the complexity of the major. So we may assign an advisor a major that only has a handful of students, but it's a much more complex case of students. So like certain majors within my college have more unique timeframes or have more unique accreditation needs or more unique paths that they take, especially when you're talking about the undergrad working towards the graduate degree. So these are just the most two common methods that we use at Marshall, and kind of to the two most common methods you'll encounter when assigning students to advisors. So what to consider when you are thinking about where to put your students. Every advisor is unique, every advisor is an individual. So I think you have to look at their previous experience, advisors' different strengths, how many students are they going to be dealing with, how long are these advising meetings going to take. Some advisors are really good dealing with the kind of the more emotional students or the students that come in more an emotional crisis. So you may want to put those with a specific population that has more of those students in it. Some advisors are really good at keeping a lot of information together and efficient and disseminating a lot of information. So you may want to give them more complex majors. So just each advisor has their own strengths, and you have to consider that when you're assigning the students to them. So assigning students alphabetically, I think it's best to use this when your majors don't differ too much in your complexity. So say you only have maybe 4 or 5 majors across your whole college. So, and they're all pretty much the same with a lot of overlap. It doesn't make a lot of sense in separating those out by majors. Everybody's been picking on Lacie today, so I'll do it too. For example, Lacie in the College of Business, a lot of her majors overlap with each other. They have a very similar curriculum. So it makes more sense for Lacie to do her advisees alphabetically. But in my college, some of ours overlap, but a lot of them are very different. So we separate them out more by major. Excuse me. So the negatives of this method is your advisors don't really become experts in any one area. They're more broadly spread out. So you don't like have a health science expert. You don't have a nursing expert. But if your majors are very similar, that's not really as big of a concern. And if you use this method and your majors are a lot different in their complexity, then some advisors, even though they're going to have a similar amount of students, they're going to be often tasked with more time to advise those students because their majors that they're saying are more complex. And sometimes your student population you're dealing with isn't always easily divided up. Sometimes in your alphabet, you've got a ton of students that are Smiths and maybe only, 3 students that are Allen. So you have to think about that if you're going to divide alphabetically. Is my student population easily divided by the alphabet? So assignment by major and by complexity. Again, this is what my college does. I have 4 very great advisors, and they are all experts in their field, and I have to rely on them heavily if I deal with students outside of my normal comfort zone of advising. So we have an advisor who just handles our School of Health or our School of Exercise and Movement. She has a lot of experience in that area. She's worked with that student population and she knows that population very well. She has the timelines down. She knows when students are going to have to turn in certain things and when students are going to have to be available for certain things. I have an advisor who handles just like communication disorders and social work, and that advisor is well versed in the needs that those students have to get their curriculum done in the correct order to make sure that they're not here any longer than they have to be. I am very fortunate in my college that I have faculty and staff advisors. So, but generally all of the students within health professions will have some type of touch point with one of my advisors. Either that means they will be advised through professional advisors in their early years, or they will at least get their evaluations for graduation or junior evaluations done by one of the professional advisors. So even though we do have staff and faculty advisors, we still have our staff advisors handle a lot of things with all of our majors. So the downfalls of this is that sometimes the majors aren't always equitable. For I do a lot of pre-health majors as far as the lead advising role, because the pre-health majors aren't as complex as some of these other majors, and that gives me more time to focus on my other duties as a lead versus having to deal with more complex majors. And my goal as lead is try to support all my advisors in their specific majors. So if you have majors that are more complex than the others, you may want to consider assigning that major to one advisor as their only job, as their only duty, because it'll give them more time to learn more about the major and to better advise the major. Let me see. So these are just all things that you need to keep in mind whenever you're dealing with advising. Whenever you're dealing with assigning students to advising. I know when I came into this role, this was a big thing whenever I came into this role, because how we had staff assigned to advisees was working, but then we got a new staff member on, so we did have to change it up a little bit. And I don't think this is something that you set and then just forget it. It's something that you need to always consider and always work on. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to our next presenter, who is Lacie.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lacie Bittinger. I'm the Director of Student Services for the College of Business here at Marshall. And one thing that you are inevitably going to have to face as an advising administrator is student complaints. It's not always a pleasant thing to have to deal with, but it will eventually happen. And this is one method that you can use to address those complaints. So we have a great acronym here, CALM. So C, clarify the situation, gather information, and try to understand what has occurred. Active listening is a great technique here. If you're not familiar with that, go Google it. There's great videos out there on that technique. Acknowledge the student's frustration. Let them know that their feelings are valid. And obviously you want to look for a solution. Sometimes it's a situation where the advisor did nothing wrong, but the student just isn't, happy with the answer, and so you have to maybe explain the policy or why that situation is what it is. Sometimes a mistake was made, and then you have to look for a path to be able to solve that for the student. So involve the student in that conversation and see what a resolution looks like. And then make the effort, follow through on what you say you're going to do, and then make sure you follow up with the student. So that's one method to use. Obviously, student complaints are very unique. So you have to be very situational with your reaction, what is best for this situation. But this is one acronym that can kind of help you remember some steps to take when you're working through those complaints. So I also teach principles of management. So I think one of the really challenging aspects of moving into an advising administrator role is that oftentimes you move into those roles because you're experts in advising. You're great with the curriculum, you understand the policies, you're great working with students and building relationships, but you may never have had really formal training on how to manage people or how to supervise teams. So I think that's sometimes a real challenge for new advising leaders, advising administrators, is now you might be a supervisor. So you're taking on some of these management duties that maybe you've never had to do. So one of the concepts that I talk about in Principles of Management, and I really like talking about this concept because I think it's valuable for all professionals or people in general. It's in our lives, but I think it's one of the most important skills that managers can practice and can work on improving, and it's called emotional intelligence. If you're not familiar with this term, it came out of some research from the 70s. It was popularized by Daniel Goleman in the mid-90s. Now it's pretty much a chapter in every Principles of Management textbook, and I'm not a psychology person, but I imagine they talk about a lot in psychology too. So emotional intelligence is that ability or that skill to be able to recognize your own emotions. So having self-awareness, to be able to manage your emotions, to motivate yourself, to recognize emotions in others, and all of that works together and goes towards maintaining and building relationships. So this is it's a lot, right? It is so important for a manager, though, to work on these skills because there's something called a negativity bias that happens. And I have my class notes over on this side. A negativity bias is essentially occurs when our mind will latch on to negative things a lot deeper and a lot more quickly sometimes than positive things. So negative energy and negative environments and negative situations spreads faster and affects people a lot of times more deeply than positivity. So part of this emotional intelligence, obviously the goal is to build relationships with your team and to create a positive work environment. So imagine the difference in working with a supervisor who, say an advisor comes to you and makes a mistake. They're coming to you to tell you they made a mistake. If the supervisor reacts by losing their temper or acting frustrated, like, oh, I can't believe you did this. Now, like, what are we going to do? Or something, hopefully not yelling at them, but maybe yelling at them, that reaction is going to create a much different impact on that team than a reaction that's like, okay, well, let's see what happened and figure out how we can work through this. But in order to be able to have a positive reaction, you have to understand your own emotions first. So if you go to the next slide, some ways that we can start building self-awareness. Now, I will give you the caveat of that I definitely have to practice some of these things and still improve. I'm kind of one of those people that like to have the last word. And sometimes that kind of gets me in trouble in meetings and stuff. So practicing this self-awareness and like, how am I feeling and how am I, what I'm about to say, how is that going to affect other people? That's something that I have to intentionally practice all the time. So these graphics come from positivepsychology.com, and the article reference is at the bottom, and that article is backed by scholarly articles. So I thought these were nice graphics to pull in. So create space and time. Intentionally reflect on your emotions and work on becoming self-aware. It's something that once you get into the habit of it, you'll do kind of on the fly. But starting out, you might have to be very intentional about creating that space and time. Practicing mindfulness, so being present in that moment, is a great time to self-reflect. Journaling, for some people is a great way to process your thoughts and record how you're feeling. And maybe record a reaction that you're like, okay, maybe next time this is what I would do differently. Practice listening. Oh, by the way, this is a European site, so hence the spelling differences. So practice listening, pay attention to the speaker, give them time, make sure they feel heard, and use those active listening skills, and then gain a different perspective. So ask your team for some feedback, and that can be really challenging. It can be really challenging to get that feedback. I had a situation when I was first entering the advising administrator role, probably a few years in, but I was micromanaging, and I kind of knew that I was doing it, but it was really hard for me to let go of. But the person came to me and we had a very honestly emotional discussion about it. And, it was hard for me to hear that, but it was very valuable because then I became very intentional about trying to fix that. And I think after that, our relationship really improved, and we were able to move forward much more productively than we would have otherwise. So some reflection questions you can ask yourself as you're starting this practice is, how do I react when someone comes to me with a problem? Kind of take some time and really note how you're reacting to things. Do you stay calm? Do you have just kind of an emotional reaction right away? How do you react? And how do you respond to other people's ideas? Not a problem, but somebody coming to you with an idea like, hey, what if we tried doing this? And sometimes that's also hard to hear because maybe what you're currently doing was your idea. So it might be hard to hear a different perspective on that. What do I do when I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed? Does that do I kind of emote that and that negativity affects my team? I have a very open office, like we're very honest with each other, and some days we'll come in and be like, look, I'm grumpy today. Like, I'm sorry. um, but we all have those days, but how am I putting that out into the world, and how is that affecting the people around me? And what do I do when I'm in a meeting and I feel the need to defend myself? Again, that's where I get in trouble sometimes. If someone tries to attack my team, I'm gonna defend them. But there's a way to do that that doesn't get you in trouble. So these are just some questions. Obviously, there's lots of other ones, but just some things to start thinking about as you start to practice this self-awareness. This is some options that you can utilize online for your own self-reflection, but also maybe have your teams do this and then discuss it to help understand each person's personality dynamics. So Myers-Briggs, that's a very popular personality test. This particular website gives you free results and an optional paid report. My personal favorite is actually the next one, the 16 personalities. It takes Myers-Briggs and actually adds some components to it. And you get very detailed free reports from that website. I actually have my students do that one and then reflect. I ask them some questions to reflect on specific parts of it. Clifton Strengths Finder is also a great one. I honestly, personally have never done this, but I know there's a lot of fans out there of it. It does cost money. So, maybe not everybody has that in their budget, but I've heard wonderful things about it. So if that is something that you have the budget for, definitely would check that out. I'm going very quickly, and I'm sorry, I'm giving you all a very bird's eye view of this, but I know that we're running short on time. So the other thing that I threw in here was conflict management styles. And these are 5 kind of natural or styles that we will individually naturally gravitate towards. So you can kind of start to think about which one of these you gravitate towards. And again, learning this about your team can really help you work together when you're solving conflict. We are running short, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So that slide's there. You can Google that and find lots of information on it. Next slide. So, sorry, I could talk about this stuff probably for hours. So, we want to open it up to questions, and you have all four of us here. So any questions, raise your hand or throw them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them for you. And thank you all for being here this morning.
Yes, thank you all. And yeah, you'll be able to go back through the slides and grab any of that stuff. I know some of it we just glossed over, but we really wanted to pack a lot in there. We kept having ideas and we're like, just put it in and we'll, you can go back to it and you can reach out to us anytime. We did do conflict management as a leadership team. And we had someone from our comm studies department do it for us. It was amazing. So if you remember, you have access to everybody on your campus. You don't have to be an expert in these things. Lacie happens to teach management stuff, so she knows those things. But if you don't, you could have a management person come to you, or you could have psychology person come to you. We've had guests from our psychology department. We've had guests from our comp studies department. We've had guests from CTL, our Center for Teaching and Learning. So, you can have other people come and help you connect with your team.
I would love to hear just a little bit more about how you decided who would be on your advising council. Did you include outside, like adjacent folks, like your trio support or the registrar? How did you decide to put that together?
I talked to, of course, my supervisor about it. She's the assistant dean of undergraduate studies. She has been connected to advising and working with advising for years. So she's an excellent source of information. We decided just start with the colleges in the beginning. So in the beginning, it was my frontline highest leader position in the college. Now, I will say at that time, some of our colleges did not even have a staff advisor. So they do now, but at that time, that meant I was working with their associate dean. He was on our advising council. And then just a leader of advising from each college. So sometimes that meant the program management manager. Sometimes that meant the student service specialist was the highest position in that college. Sometimes that meant the director. So whoever was the highest advising position in that college is who I pulled in. Now, after we got settled and we had our mission and we had been working together for probably over a year, then we brought in our other units. And then as we grew, we brought in more. So just as you start working through things, you want insight from other groups, you certainly could have your student support staff as part of it, or you could have them as guests, or whatever your mission and vision dictates. So whatever your goals as a unit, that dictates who you bring in.
Where might we find a copy of your presentation?
Yeah, we'll post all of the presentations on the advising conference website. So right now you can go back and access last year's. Once this concludes, we'll get everybody's presentation will be posted on the website, and you can come back and access it anytime. And the last slide, which we didn't show, is all of our contact information. So our contact information is on the last slide. Of course, if you can reach out to any of us about any of the topics. We did it together. We just spoke on the parts that we just kind of split it up 10 minutes each.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
Comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say, definitely if any of these topics sparked questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And then also, like Sarah said, you're at a university with experts on like everything. So if the things like emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, if any of that really was like, wow, I really would like to learn more about this, reach out to people on your campus. Faculty tend to love it when you want them to come like do some training with you. They love to share their expertise, and again, you have access to that. I mean, so don't hesitate to reach out to people on your campus and ask them if they'll come speak to a group of advisors about those topics. It can be really valuable and give you a different perspective, because they're going to look at it from kind of a non-advising perspective, and then you can take it and apply it to your advising. So definitely do that.
If you don't have the format to set up an advising council, something we did here with the graduate college is form a professional learning group. a professional learning community, a PLC, which there is a moderator, but everybody just comes together to learn. So if you want that as a first step, I could certainly talk to you more about how we did that at the graduate level, but it was just all graduate advisors learning and sharing, this is what I want to learn about, how can we do that? And then we would have guests. So if the advising council sounds a little bit too big, you can always start with a professional learning community. And there are great outcomes for that, a lot of studies and best practices there too. So you can always start with a smaller step.